Back to our screen with our focus on initial presentation, Focus on Health Law. This is a proud presentation of attorney and counselor at law, Mr. Kenneth Haber from Boyd's, Maryland. This renowned attorney will speak to us on what are some of the Medicare entities and what do they do. To moderate this segment is Chief Attorney at Law, Mr. Ramesh Khurana from the Khurana Law Firm. Let's take a look.
Welcome to this show. My name is Ramesh Khurana, attorney at law. I have my office in Gaithersburg, Maryland. And today I have a great privilege to introduce to the audience a very well-known and experienced attorney, Attorney Kenneth Haber. Kenneth, welcome to our studio.
Thank you, Ramesh.
I know that you had done so much work as an attorney in the office of
Inspector
General.
And the U.S.
also
Attorney's Office.
I know. And you are the former Assistant United States Attorney. And nobody can answer my questions better than you do.
Well, thank you. You're
so
very kind.
I'm going to talk about, and you're so kind to come all the way to our studio
From
to
Boyd's,
answer our questions.
from Boyd's, Maryland.
I know. You know, Ken has his office in Boyd's, Maryland. It's not very far from here. So tell me, you know, I always hear about MAC in Medicare. What is that?
Well, the MAC is, something that is sort of flexible because one time you can use the term MAC and it's the Medicare Appeals Council. And the next time you use the word MAC or the acronym MAC, it's the Medicare Administrative Contractor. So you have to, within the context of the speech, the language, the sentence.
Only then you'll be able to tell me.
What's
your context, right?
That's exactly.
Okay. Now, what does each MAC do?
Well, the Medicare Administrative Contractor is the one that you would typically think back 20, 30 years ago would be Blue Cross Blue Shield, et cetera, where they're administrating the programs, and that's what the MAC does now. And Blue Cross may have a contract someplace itself, but there's a limited number of MACs for the whole country, and they administer the Medicare program, determining enrollment, determining payments for the various claims that are submitted to them, doing a certain amount of auditing, making referrals to other administrative contractors for follow-up in terms of investigations or having like a RAC doing a recovery audit. RAC is a recovery audit contractor, and they'll go around on a bounty basis trying to pull in money, and they can get referrals from the MAC as well. So
wonderful. Ken, I have also heard a lot about the other term, which is called ZPIC. But can you please explain to us, what is ZPIC?
ZPIC is Zone Protection Integrity Contractor. And
what does it do?
It's sort of like the administrative policeman, for Medicare in terms of handling things administratively. They're not criminal investigators. They don't have the training as criminal investigators, but they try to identify overpayments. They try to determine if there are cases that should be referred to the Inspector General's office, which is the office that handles investigations, criminal investigations for the department and for Medicare. And they have a full plate in terms of things to do in this regard. They can
very busy office.
Very busy offices. They do recoveries on overpayments. They have an incentive system, but it's not the same sort of incentive system as the RAC. The RAC basically gets all their money by bounty hunting, and the RAC, I think it's generally around 10-12% they'll get what they find, and they have incentive to make recoveries, and I don't know of any disincentives for when they're disallowed, because of the fact right now we don't have Medicare appeals to administrative law judges of any sort because of the fact we got like 800,000 case backlog. So there's no determination that there's even disallowments at the higher levels. There are QICs, and the QICs are quality integrity contractors, and the quality integrity contractors are the third level of review that a contractor can seek if there's a disallowance or recovery. The MAC has initial determination as to whether or not to make a payment, and if it's a denial of a payment, then you can ask for a redetermination, and that goes to a separate, distinct unit within the MAC.
Is there any name of that unit?
Second.
So MAC basically.
It's still the
Within
MAC.
MAC.
Within
Okay.
the MAC.
Okay.
And then it goes to the QIC for appeal. Now, interestingly enough, I had been reviewing on one of my cases where the medical director for one of the QICs was the medical director for one of the MACs in one of a different location than where the QIC was, but still the medical director for the particular MAC. And you just have to wonder, how objective is that medical director and the staff that's working under him?
Interesting.
Yes.
Now, let us change the subject a little bit. Now, what's a Medicaid fraud control unit?
Those are specific units generally in the located in the office of the Attorney General in each state, and they're composed of investigators, and at least one prosecutor, if not more, are assigned to it. And the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit, because it's in the Attorney General's office, has grand jury authority just like the U.S. Attorney's Office does. So they can handle grand jury investigations, and they can render indictments just like the U.S. Attorney's Office and have criminal prosecutions like the U.S. Attorney's Office. Now, the Medicaid Fraud Control Units, you know, while they're in the office of the Attorney General of their respective state, they're getting a good chunk, I think approximately 75% of their costs paid for through Health and Human Services. So the IG's office does surveys on them and determines whether or not they are in compliance. I've never known of any state losing its grant except for one, and that was one that I had been on the survey of.
Okay. Okay, great. So
That was back in the 80s for that matter.
80s.
In the 80s.
Okay. Now, how is a Medicare provider supposed to appeal payment denials or recoupments? Can you please explain?
Yes, as I indicated, their initial step is to ask for reconsideration, or excuse me, a redetermination by the MAC, the Medicare Administrative Contractor.
Within the same office,
Within
second
the
layer.
Second layer within
Right.
the same office. And then if that's denied, if there's no insufficient relief or no relief, then they can go to the QIC, the Quality Integrity Contractor. After that, then they can go to the ALJ under the MAC, the Medicare Appeals Council. And the first level in the MAC is the ALJ level when there's a single ALJ. Now, if you don't get a determination after 90 days of filing, you know, you can escalate your claim to the Medicare Appeals Council, where there's
So from
three
single person ALJ to
the council
Well,
itself,
okay.
where there'll be a 3 ALJ
So
panel.
that means ALJ is supposed to make an adjudication within 90 days.
Yes, but they don't. And the fact of the matter is they are so backlogged at both levels of the MAC, Medicare Appeals Council, that it's going to be years before they're cleared out. There's 800,000 cases, and they're increasing at about 15,000 cases a week.
So
a week.
no new ALJ positions are being created or hired.
Nothing
Funding
of the,
issue.
nothing that I'm aware of. They may have one or two here or there or something, but there's no massive effort to increase the ALJs. Congress created a real problem when they did the Affordable Care Act because of the fact that they decided that they're going to find $500 billion of waste, fraud, and abuse in the Medicare system.
They never got it.
And there was, A, they never got it, but B, there never was $500 billion of waste, fraud, and abuse to get it from. And in the meantime, what they're doing is they're squeezing all the doctors, they're squeezing all the hospitals. The hospitals are better fit to take care of themselves through their lobby, and they were able to get Congress to force the department to make massive settlements of 75 cents on the dollar. They don't want the hospitals to fail because then where are people going to go? So the question becomes, what about the individual doctor's offices? Well, they don't really care, you know, if a doctor goes out of business here or there. They really don't. And the fact of the matter is many of them are falling out, many of them are dropping Medicare, and many of them are going bankrupt.
They just cannot cope up with the situation.
They can't cope with
Right,
the system,
right.
the situation, because there's just massive denials of claims, and they don't have any legitimate focus of relief. As I just mentioned, the medical director of one QIC was the medical director of a MAC. Now, I mean, like, that's like a conflict of interest. You know, I mean, the person who's supposed to be reviewing a MAC in one jurisdiction is working for the same MAC in a different jurisdiction.
Right. But that is so true in most of the federal agencies.
I don't
You
think
know,
it's
like,
quite that blatant.
Yeah, you know, I tell you, even in the Department of Labor, when certain decisions are made by the Department of Labor, they go to the ALJ level in Department of Labor. This is basically part of the same department.
Yeah, but
You know?
I think there's a little more integrity with the ALJs. You know, I really do, than, you know, some contractor, and that's what the medical director of a QIC is. The QIC is a contractor, and they have, the department has certain expectations of recoveries from them, and if they want to get their contracts renewed, they got to come forth with those recoveries, and here the medical director has got to be the point man on making sure those recoveries happen, and then he's working at both levels, the level that's reviewing what the first level does, just in a different you know, physical location, but he's working for the one that's taking away the money in the first place, and then he's working for the QIC in the other place. You know, I mean, like,
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, that's a real conflict.
Yeah. Now let me ask you one more question. Now, what Medicare contractor undertakes a reconsideration for a payment denial?
The reconsideration is the QIC.
Oh, that's QIC.
That's the QIC, right. It's redetermination for the MAC level.
Okay, now let's talk about if the denial is made by QIC, what is the appeal process?
Then it goes to the ALJs, and of course there's 800,000 cases there.
800,000
You know,
cases.
and you can theoretically, and you can escalate it after 90 days from the ALJ to the Appeals Council itself. And after 180 days, if I recall, you can escalate it from there to the U.S. District Court. But when you're doing that, you're escalating it without an evidentiary hearing. So if you don't have a basis already in the case before you go to the ALJ in the first place, you're not going to get any sort of evidentiary basis later on, and there you are in U.S. District Court without a good record, and you know, you've got to you know, convince the U.S. District Judge that they owe you money, and you don't have a developed record because of the fact that you didn't get a chance to have a hearing before the ALJ.
Now, you already told us what is the status of backlog of appeals. You said about 800,000?
800,000 and growing at 15,000 a week. And this is what's been acknowledged by the department itself.
Okay. No, great.
It's probably 900,000 now.
Oh, okay. So the cameraman is indicating we are out of time, but I really appreciate your coming to our studio and answering our questions. Sorry, some of these questions were difficult to answer because nobody has the answer to them.
I wish people did have the answer, but it's going to take some sort of congressional resolution to have an answer for some of these things.
Again, thank you very much.
I thank you.
I appreciate that.